I'm Deanna Lockwood, and the moment my life split into before and after wasn't some slow realization. It was two sharp words barked across a marble foyer 18 years after everything started. Shut the door. My wealthy aunt, the one who raised me after my mother abandoned me when I was 8 years old, stood there in her Baltimore estate eyes, cold voice like ice cracking. She had just discovered I had come uninvited. I was 26 that day, standing on the wrong side of a door that had once been my home, holding nothing but questions I finally had the courage to ask. She didn't wait for them. The heavy oak slammed in my face, the sound echoing down the tree-lined drive like a final verdict. Let me take you back to how it all began. I was 8, living in a dusty house in Albuquerque, New Mexico. One morning, I woke up to a note on the kitchen counter in my mother's looping handwriting, gone to Cape Cod for a couple weeks. Take care of yourself. Love you. No signature, no phone number, no plan. My older brother and little sister were already used to being the favorites, so when Mom packed her bags, she took them with her. Me, I got left behind like an afterthought. I waited on the front steps every day, convinced it was a mistake. Days turned into weeks. The fridge emptied. The silence got louder. Then one afternoon, a sleek black sedan pulled up. A woman stepped out, tall, tailored suit, sharp eyes. My Aunt Catherine Langley, Mom's older sister, the successful lawyer everyone in the family whispered about but rarely saw. She took one look at me, small, sunburned, clutching a backpack, and said, "You're coming with me." No discussion. No call to Mom for permission. Just papers, signed, bags packed, and a plane ticket to Baltimore. She told me on the flight that she would raise me properly, give me the structure and future my mother clearly couldn't. I didn't argue. At 8, having someone choose you, even if it felt sudden, felt like rescue. For years, that's exactly what it seemed like. She turned my life around, pushed me harder than anyone ever had, and built me into someone I barely recognized. But 18 years later, when I showed up at her estate without calling, first ready to confront everything I'd buried, she made it clear I was no longer welcome. Shut the door. If you want to know why the woman who saved me ended up slamming that door in my face, and what happened when her fortune brought every ghost from my past crawling back, stay until the end. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single part of this story. It only gets crazier from here. The plane touched down in Baltimore, and I stepped into a city that felt like it belonged to someone else's life. I was 8 years old, still clutching the backpack I'd packed in Albuquerque, New Mexico, expecting Mom to come back any day. That note on the kitchen counter, scribbled in her hurried cursive, kept replaying in my mind. Gone to Cape Cod for a couple weeks. Take care of yourself. Love you. It wasn't the first time she'd left us for a trip, but it was the first time she didn't bother to take me along. My older brother and little sister, her favorites, got to go. I was the middle child, the one who didn't sparkle enough to pack. The house in Albuquerque turned quiet fast. The first day I sat on the porch watching cars pass, certain Mom had just forgotten to write my name on the itinerary. By day 3, I was rationing cereal, pouring smaller bowls to make it last. The fridge held half a jug of milk, some ketchup, and a single apple that rolled around like it was mocking me. I didn't cry, not yet. Crying felt like admitting she meant to leave me behind. By the second week, the neighbors started noticing. Mrs. Garcia next door brought over a plate of tamales, her eyes soft with pity. "You okay, Mija?" she asked. I nodded, too stubborn to say I wasn't. I kept the TV on low, pretending the laugh tracks were company. At night, I dragged a blanket to the couch, avoiding my bedroom because it felt too empty. I told myself Mom would pull into the driveway any minute, apologizing, saying it was all a mix-up. She didn't. On day 17, I was burning toast in the kitchen when a car horn blared outside. Not Mom's beat-up sedan, but something sleek, black, and expensive. The driver's door opened, and a woman in a crisp blazer stepped out, tall, her hair pulled back tight, her heels clicking on the pavement like she owned it. Aunt Catherine Langley, my mother's older sister, the one Mom always called too fancy for her own good. I'd only seen her twice before at awkward family dinners where she barely spoke to anyone. Now she was here scanning me like I was a case file. "Deanna," she said, voice clipped, but not unkind. "Where's your mother, Cape Cod?" I mumbled the words, tasting bitter. "She took my brother and sister." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't ask for details, just stepped inside, her eyes sweeping over the stale air and empty fridge. "This won't do," she muttered, more to herself than me. She pulled out a phone fancier than anything I'd ever seen and made a call. I caught fragments: Child Services, temporary custody, Albuquerque to Baltimore. My stomach twisted. Baltimore sounded like another planet. "Pack your things," Aunt Catherine said, hanging up. "You're not staying here." I froze. "What about Mom? She's coming back." Her gaze softened just for a second before it hardened again. "If she was coming back, she wouldn't have left you with nothing but a note." I wanted to argue, but the truth stung too much. I shoved clothes into my backpack: 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, a toothbrush, and a dog-eared book about constellations I'd been reading to feel less alone. Aunt Catherine watched, arms crossed, not offering help but not rushing me either. When I zipped the bag shut, she nodded. "Good. Let's go." The drive to the airport was silent. I kept glancing at her, trying to figure out why she'd come. Mom always said Aunt Catherine was a big-shot lawyer who didn't have time for family. So why me? Why not my brother or sister? I didn't ask. My voice felt stuck, like it might break if I tried. At the airport, she handed me a bottle of water and a granola bar. "Eat," she said. "You look like you haven't in days." I nibbled the bar, the crumbs sticking to my dry throat. On the plane, she sat beside me, flipping through a stack of papers. I stared out the window, watching New Mexico shrink below. My whole world, Mom, my siblings, that dusty house was gone, and I didn't know if I'd ever get it back. When we landed in Baltimore, the air was cooler, sharper. Aunt Catherine's house, no mansion, wasn't like anything I'd seen. Brick walls, tall windows, a lawn so green it looked fake. Inside, everything gleamed: polished wood floors, a chandelier that caught the light like stars. My sneakers squeaked on the tiles, and I felt small, out of place. "This is your room," Aunt Catherine said, opening a door to a space bigger than our old living room. A bed with crisp white sheets, a desk, a bookshelf already lined with books I'd never heard of. I stood there, backpack still slung over one shoulder, afraid to touch anything. "You'll be fine here," she said, her tone matter of fact. "But there are rules. You'll go to school, you'll study hard, and you'll listen. I'm not your mother. I won't let you waste potential." I nodded, not sure what potential meant, but too tired to ask. That night, I lay in the too soft bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about Mom, my brother, my sister, probably laughing on a beach in Cape Cod. I wondered if they even noticed I was gone. The first few months in Baltimore passed in a blur of new routines. Aunt Catherine wasted no time. The morning after we arrived, she marched me to a private school downtown, her heels echoing through the marble hallways as she spoke to the principal like they were negotiating a contract. By lunchtime, I had a uniform, a stack of textbooks, and a schedule that left no room for downtime. "Structure builds character," she told me on the drive home. "You'll thank me later." She wasn't wrong about the structure. Breakfast was at 7 sharp: oatmeal or eggs, never cereal, from a box. Homework started right after school, no TV until it was done. She sat across the table most evenings, reviewing my assignments with the same intensity she probably used in court. If I got a B, she'd point out exactly where I lost points and made me redo the problems until they were perfect. At first, it felt overwhelming, but the grades climbed fast. Teachers started calling me promising. Report cards went from C's in Albuquerque to straight A's within a year. Aunt Catherine rewarded results. When I brought home my first honor roll certificate, she handed me a crisp $20 bill. "Allowance," she said. "Earned, not given." Every good grade or completed chore added a few dollars to the envelope she kept in her study. But the money came with strings. She decided what I could spend it on: books. school supplies, maybe a new sweater if mine was wearing thin. Once I eyed a cheap necklace at the mall with a friend. She shook her head. Not practical. Save for something that matters. The schedule tightened as I got older. Piano lessons on Tuesdays, debate club on Thursdays, tutoring if any subject dipped below 95%. Weekends meant volunteer hours at a legal aid clinic downtown filing papers and watching her cross-examine witnesses during mock trials. Observation is education, she'd say, handing me a notepad. I learned to spot inconsistencies in stories to argue points without raising my voice skills that made teachers notice me in ways they never had before. By fifth grade, I was skipping ahead in math. Aunt Catherine enrolled me in advanced classes, drove me to competitions on Saturdays. When I placed second in a regional spelling bee, she framed the ribbon and hung it in her office. Pride flickered in her eyes for a moment before she moved on to the next goal. Second is first loser, she said. Next time, aim higher. It stung, but it also pushed me. I started staying up late studying, determined to prove I could be first. The control crept in slowly. She monitored my phone minutes back then. It was a basic flip phone she'd bought for emergencies. If I went over, she'd deduct from allowance. Friends had to be vetted. Playdates turned into study sessions at our house under her supervision. One girl from school invited me to a birthday party with a pool. Aunt Catherine declined on my behalf. Too much risk, not enough benefit. I didn't argue. Arguing rarely changed her mind, and I'd learned early that compliance kept the peace. Still, the support was real. New clothes appeared at the start of each school year, better quality than anything I'd owned before. Braces fixed my crooked teeth, glasses replaced with contacts when I complained about headaches. Doctor visits happened on schedule, something that had been random with Mom. Aunt Catherine never missed a parent-teacher conference, taking notes in neat handwriting, asking pointed questions about college prep tracks even when I was only 10. The house staff, a housekeeper and a cook, kept everything running smoothly, but Aunt Catherine ran the rules. Curfew was strict even on weekends. Bedtime shifted later as I aged, but lights out meant lights out. She'd check my room sometimes, making sure no books were hidden under the covers. Sleep matters more than cramming, she'd say, confiscating flashlights if she found them. By middle school, the results showed everywhere. I won scholarships to summer academic camps, gave speeches at assemblies, earned a spot on the student council. Teachers praised my discipline. Aunt Catherine nodded approval, adding small privileges, a later bedtime, a bigger allowance envelope. But the envelope still lived in her study. I never held the full amount myself. I started to feel the weight of it all, the constant measuring, the lack of breathing room. Yet I couldn't deny the progress. The scared kid who'd rationed cereal in an empty house was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, more capable, someone who knew how to win. Aunt Catherine had built that version of me, one rule at a time. High school hit, and the pressure dialed up another notch. Aunt Catherine switched me to an elite prep academy across town, one with ivy-covered buildings and tuition that made my stomach drop when I overheard her discussing it. Investment, she called it, signing the check without blinking. Classes were brutal AP courses stacked on top of each other, essays due every week, tests that counted for half the grade. She expected nothing less than top 5%. When I slipped to 8th in sophomore year, she sat me down that night. Mediocrity isn't an option, she said, voice low and steady. Not after everything I've put in. The words landed heavy, like I owed her perfection. Extracurriculars multiplied. Mock trial team captain by junior year because she insisted law-adjacent activities looked best on applications. Debate tournaments 8 weekends. She drove me to every one, critiquing my delivery in the car ride home. Stronger eye contact. Pause for emphasis. Never let them see you flustered. I won regionals twice, and she allowed a small smile, but it vanished quick. Good. Now nationals. The control tightened around money and time in ways I hadn't felt before. Allowance increased with age, but she opened a joint account and reviewed every transaction. Coffee with friends. She'd question the receipt. New shoes that weren't school-approved returned. Frivolity derails focus, she'd say, handing back the practical pair she picked instead. Curfew moved to 11 on weekends, but only if grades stayed perfect. One late night studying at a friend's house triggered a lecture about boundaries and responsibility. I got my first part-time job at 16 shelving books at a small independent bookstore downtown. I wanted spending money that didn't come with lectures. Aunt Catherine fought it at first. Your time is better spent on resume builders. But I pushed, promising it wouldn't affect grades. She relented with conditions. 15 hours max per week, shift scheduled around mock trial practice, paychecks deposited into the joint account. I'll manage it until you're 18, she said. Proof you can handle independence later. The job felt like freedom at first. Coworkers my age joked around during slow hours. Customers thanked me for recommendations, tips added up in a jar I could actually touch. I bought my own phone plan with the first big paycheck, hiding the excitement when the bill came in my name only. Aunt Catherine noticed the new number immediately. Smart, she admitted, but then added restrictions on data usage. The victory tasted bittersweet. Doubt started creeping in during junior year. Friends talked about family vacations, spontaneous road trips, parents who trusted them to make mistakes. My life ran on spreadsheets. Aunt Catherine updated monthly college lists, ranked by prestige scholarship deadlines, color-coded summer programs pre-selected. When I mentioned wanting to study environmental policy, she dismissed it. Law or business? Higher earning potential, more influence. I nodded, but the seed planted itself. Was all this for me, or for the version of me she wanted? Still, the achievements piled up. Valedictorian contender's senior year full-ride scholarship offers rolling in acceptance to a top university with a pre-law track. Classmates looked to me for advice. Teachers asked my opinion in discussions. I stood taller in debates, spoke without second-guessing, negotiated extensions when needed. The discipline she drilled into me worked. I felt capable, sharp, ready for whatever came next. But capability came with questions. Late at night, after shifts at the bookstore, I'd count the cash tips in my pocket and wonder why even earned money felt monitored. I started noticing how Aunt Catherine never asked about my feelings, only outcomes. Wins earned approval, anything less earned correction. The house was comfortable, the opportunities endless, yet something gnawed at me. Control disguised as care was still control. By graduation, I walked across the stage with honors, Aunt Catherine clapping politely in the front row. The applause felt good earned. But as I gripped the diploma, I realized the confidence surging through me wasn't just hers to claim anymore. It was starting to feel like mine. College applications became my quiet rebellion. I spent senior summer researching schools Aunt Catherine hadn't pre-approved, hunting scholarships she didn't know about. I submitted essays on my own terms, talking about growing up without a safety net, not just the polished resume she wanted highlighted. Several partial scholarships came through, enough to cover half the tuition at a solid state university 2 hours from Baltimore. When I showed her the acceptance letters, she frowned. You could aim higher. But the funding gap was small, and she agreed to cover the rest on the condition I stuck to pre-law and lived off campus under her rules. Move-in day felt surreal. No parent hauling boxes like the other freshmen. Aunt Catherine dropped me at the dorm curb, handed over a prepaid card loaded with strict monthly limits, and reminded me to call weekly with grade updates. I waved as she drove off, then carried my own duffel up 3 flights, pulse racing with something close to freedom. Classes started strong. Business major with a marketing focus, close enough to law to avoid fights, different enough to feel like my choice. I thrived in group projects, pitched ideas professors actually listened to, pulled all-nighters that ended in A's. The prepaid card ran out fast on textbooks and coffee, so I picked up weekend shifts at a campus cafe, pouring lattes and pocketing cash tips Aunt Catherine couldn't track. That's where I met Sawyer Grant. He came in every Tuesday morning, tall with messy dark hair, always ordering black coffee and settling into a corner booth with a laptop. One slow shift, he asked about the book peeking from my apron pocket, an old marketing case study. We talked shop for 20 minutes. He was a junior, double majoring in business and graphic design, interning at a local agency. His laugh was easy, his questions genuine. No interrogation about GPAs or future earnings. We started studying together between my shifts. He'd save me a seat in the library, bring extra snacks when he noticed I skipped meals to save money. Dates were simple walks around Campus Lake, late-night diner runs paid with my cafe tips. When I told him about growing up with rigid rules and monitored accounts, he didn't push for details. "Sounds intense," he said once, squeezing my hand. "You're doing this anyway. That's what matters." Aunt Catherine met him over winter break when I brought him home for dinner. She grilled him on internships, salary projections, 5-year plans. Sawyer answered politely but didn't shrink. Later in private, she warned me. "He's aimless. Design won't pay like corporate law. Don't let distraction derail you." I defended him mildly at first, then stopped mentioning him in our weekly calls. The toxicity sharpened into focus sophomore year. Aunt Catherine demanded access to my university portal for grade checks. When I hesitated, she threatened to withhold tuition payments. "I'm investing in your future," she said. "Transparency is reasonable." I gave in, but resentment simmered. She criticized my marketing electives, pushed summer law internships I didn't want, questioned every new friend's usefulness. Sawyer saw it clearer than I did. One night, after a tense call with her, he pulled me close. "She treats you like a project, not a person." The words hit hard because they were true. I started pulling away shorter calls, vague answers about classes declining, rides home for breaks. I took extra shifts at the cafe, then added freelance social media gigs for local businesses, building a separate savings account she didn't know about. By junior year, the scholarships I'd won freshman year renewed, and combined with my earnings, I covered more than half my expenses. Aunt Catherine noticed the drop in requests for money. "You're managing well," she said, approval, mixed with suspicion. I didn't explain the hidden account or the growing distance. Sawyer and I moved into a small off-campus apartment together senior year, paid mostly with our combined jobs. I told her last minute. She called it reckless. Graduation came with honors in marketing, a job offer from the agency Sawyer interned at, and a quiet decision forming inside me. The woman who'd pulled me from an empty house had given me tools, but she'd also taught me what I didn't want: control wrapped in care. Sawyer stood beside me at commencement, cheering louder than anyone. As I accepted my degree, I felt the shift complete. I was funding my own life, now making my own choices, ready to draw boundaries that should have existed years ago. 2 years after graduation, the call came on a rainy Tuesday. I was at my desk in Philadelphia reviewing a client campaign when the phone rang with an unfamiliar Baltimore number. A woman introduced herself as Aunt Catherine's personal assistant, voice shaky. "Your aunt has been diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer. She's refusing most visitors, but I thought you should know." The words punched the air out of me. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the screen until Sawyer walked in from the kitchen. He read my face, pulled me into a hug without asking questions. For weeks I wrestled with it. Aunt Catherine sent no direct message, no request to see me. Updates came secondhand through the assistant treatments started, then stopped, weight dropping fast. Part of me wanted to stay away to let the distance I'd built remain. But another part, the 8-year-old who'd once seen her as rescue, couldn't ignore the pull. I needed answers before it was too late. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just clarity on why control had always mattered more than connection. Sawyer supported whatever I decided. "Go if you need to," he said. "But don't go alone." I booked a train ticket for a Friday afternoon, told no one in Baltimore, and left work early. The ride south felt longer than any before, every mile tightening the knot in my stomach. I arrived unannounced rental car parked a block away so the engine wouldn't alert the gate camera. The estate looked smaller than memory-manicured lawn, familiar brick facade, but the air carried a quiet that hadn't been there in my childhood. No staff cars in the drive. I used the old side entrance code I still remembered. It beeped green. Inside the house smelled faintly of antiseptic under the usual polish. A nurse in scrubs met me in the hallway, eyes widening. "Miss Lockwood?" "She's resting. She doesn't want I cut her off gently." "I won't stay long." She hesitated, then pointed toward the study converted into a downstairs bedroom. I walked alone, heart hammering against my ribs. Aunt Catherine lay propped on pillows thinner than I'd imagined, skin pale against the dark hair still pulled back severely. An IV stand stood nearby, oxygen tubes in place. Her eyes, sharp as ever, snapped open when I stepped in. Surprise flashed then, something harder. "Deanna." Her voice rasped, but carried authority. "You shouldn't be here. I heard you were sick." I stayed near the door, hands clasped to keep them steady. "I needed to see you." She pressed a button to raise the bed higher. Needed or decided, there's a difference. The words stung with familiar precision. I took a breath. "I have questions. About everything. Why the rules never bent. Why my choices always had to be yours." A dry laugh escaped her. "You think illness buys you the right to interrogate me?" "No. But it buys me the chance to ask while you can still answer." I stepped closer. "You pulled me out of that house in Albuquerque, gave me opportunities I wouldn't have had. I'm grateful for that. But gratitude doesn't mean ignoring the rest, how you made every decision for me, how you treated people like projects." Her face tightened. "I gave you discipline, direction. Without it, you'd be nowhere. Maybe. Or maybe I'd have figured it out with room to breathe." Tension thickened the room. I kept my voice even. "When I chose marketing over law, you acted like I betrayed you. When I moved in with Sawyer, you called it reckless. Even now you're defending control instead of enough." She cut in sharper than her frail body suggested. "You come here uninvited after barely calling for years to lecture me on my deathbed. I came for honesty. From both of us." She reached for a call button on the side table. The nurse appeared quickly. "Escort her out." I didn't move. "Aunt Catherine." Her eyes locked on mine, cold and final. "You were a responsibility I took on. I fulfilled it. You turned out successful. That's the end of the obligation." She paused. Breath labored. "Now leave." The nurse touched my arm. I shook her off, leaning forward. "Is that really all it was?" Obligation. For a second something flickered, regret, maybe anger, but it vanished. She turned her face away. "I'm tired." I stood there waiting for more, but nothing came. The silence stretched until the nurse guided me toward the door. At the threshold, Aunt Catherine's voice cracked across the room one last time. "Shut the door." The nurse closed it softly behind me. I walked down the long hallway past framed awards and family photos that never included Mom or my siblings out into the evening air. The heavy front door clicked shut at my back without help. I didn't look behind me again. 3 months later, another call shattered the quiet. The same assistant voice, flat now. "She passed early this morning, peacefully in her sleep." I sat frozen at the kitchen table in Philadelphia, Sawyer, reaching for my hand across the coffee mugs. No tears came right away, just a hollow echo like the slam of that door still ringing. The assistant gave details: small service in 2 weeks, estate matters to follow. I thanked her, ended the call, and booked a hotel in Baltimore. Sawyer offered to come. I told him I needed to handle this part alone. The funeral home smelled of lilies and polished wood. About 40 people filled the rows, mostly Aunt Catherine's colleagues. A few old neighbors. No one crying openly. Her casket sat closed at the front, a tasteful spray of white roses on top. I took a seat near the back, black dress, simple, no jewelry. The service was brief. A partner from her firm spoke about landmark cases, dedication, legacy. No one mentioned family beyond vague nods to those she mentored. Then they appeared. My mother, Christina Lockwood, walked in 10 minutes late, arm linked with a man I didn't recognize. At first, my brother Brian, heavier, now suit ill-fitting. Trailing them was my sister Charity, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the dim light. They scanned the room, spotted me, and made their way over with practiced, somber expressions. Deanna, Christina whispered, pulling me into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume. We came as soon as we heard. Such a shock. Her grip lingered too long, eyes already darting toward the front. Brian clapped my shoulder. Long time, sis. Sorry it's under these circumstances. Charity air-kissed both cheeks. You look tired. Are you okay? I nodded, throat tight. They settled in the row ahead, whispering among themselves. A younger man joined them, mid-30s, tailored suit, sharp features. Drew Langley, Aunt Catherine's son, the cousin, I'd met only a handful of times at tense holiday dinners years ago. He shook my hand stiffly. Deanna, Mother spoke of you often. His tone carried an edge I couldn't place yet. The reception followed at a nearby hotel ballroom, catered sandwiches, coffee urns, quiet conversations. Christina cornered me near the dessert table. Catherine was always so private. Did she ever mention arrangements? The house investments? Her voice dripped concern, but her eyes calculated. Brian jumped in. We're family after all. Blood. She wouldn't leave us out completely, right? Charity nodded. Especially after everything you put her through, the distance moving away. Drew pulled me aside minutes later. Look, I know you lived with her longest, but I'm her actual son. The estate should reflect that. He handed me a business card, some wealth management firm. We should talk soon. I excused myself, pulse racing. Sawyer texted from home. You okay? I replied. Not even close. The reading came a week later at Mr. Delaney's downtown office, dark paneling, leather chairs, air thick with tension. Christina, Brian, Charity, and Drew sat on one side, dressed like they were attending a board meeting. I took the opposite chair, folder from the assistant in my lap, containing medical updates I'd never asked for. Mr. Delaney cleared his throat. The will is straightforward. Debts paid, small bequests to staff and charities. He paused, adjusting glasses. The bulk of the estate property's accounts investments goes to Deanna Lockwood. Silence cracked the room. Christina gasped. Brian leaned forward. That can't be right. Drew's face reddened. She lived with Mother for years. Undue influence, clearly. Mr. Delaney continued calmly. The document was witnessed by independent parties, updated multiple times with capacity affirmed by physicians. Contesting will be difficult and costly. They didn't listen. Within days, letters arrived from attorneys representing the family. Claims of coercion, promises broken, mental decline. Christina called once, voice syrupy. Honey, we just want what's fair. For all of us. I let it go to voicemail. The lawsuit dragged 18 months. Depositions in sterile conference rooms, discovery demands for every email or note from my childhood. Experts argued over signatures, timelines. Legal fees piled up, hundreds of thousands drained from their sides for lawyers, filings, appeals. My defense, funded quietly from a trust Aunt Catherine had ring-fenced, held firm. Judges dismissed motions one by one. Through it all, they grew bolder. Brian emailed about settling amicably. Charity posted vague social media pleas about family unity in tough times. Drew's firm circulated rumors among old colleagues about my manipulation. Sawyer kept me grounded, reminding me nightly that blood didn't earn trust. The final hearing ended with a judge's gavel. Will upheld no grounds for contest. Costs awarded against them. I walked out into Baltimore's sunlight, phone buzzing with angry texts I deleted unread. The judge's final ruling arrived on a crisp fall morning. Mr. Delaney called while I was walking to a client meeting. It's over. Will upheld in full. Their appeals exhausted. You inherit everything. No celebration in his voice, just fact. I stopped on the sidewalk, phone pressed to my ear, watching leaves scatter across the Philadelphia street. Relief washed over me, quiet and deep. Sawyer met me for lunch afterward. We split a sandwich on a park bench, his arm around my shoulders as I processed the weight lifting. The fallout hit them hard and fast. Christina's house went into foreclosure 6 months later. Legal bills had drained savings she'd counted on for retirement. Brian lost his car, took a lower-paying job after employers heard whispers about the public case. Charity's social circle shrank. Invitations dried up when mutual friends sided with distance over drama. Drew's firm suffered clients pulled accounts uncomfortable with the headlines about greedy inheritance fights. Word spread in Baltimore circles the family who sued the woman their relative raised. Doors closed at events. Conversations hushed when they entered rooms. They tried reaching out at first. Emails from Christina begging for just a small loan to get back on track. Voicemails from Brian blaming lawyers for bad advice. A long message from Charity about healing and moving forward. Drew sent a formal letter proposing a family settlement even after losing. I read none past the subject line. Blocked numbers, deleted accounts, changed email filters. Sawyer helped set up everything: new privacy settings, unlisted address. No replies, no meetings, no exceptions. The estate settled quietly. I sold the Baltimore house, too many echoes, and invested most proceeds into a trust for future stability. A portion went to causes Aunt Catherine had ignored: scholarships for kids from broken homes, programs teaching financial independence early. The rest built our life with Sawyer. We bought a modest townhouse in Philadelphia, traveled when work allowed, hosted friends who'd become chosen family over blood. Years on happiness settled in ways I hadn't known to expect. Mornings with Sawyer making coffee. Evenings planning projects at the agency where we both climbed ranks. Weekends hiking nearby trails, laughing over inside jokes, built from trust, not obligation. No monitored accounts, no vetoed choices, no performance reviews disguised as care. Just respect, mutual, daily, unspoken. I thought about them sometimes. Christina working longer hours to cover debts, Brian avoiding old acquaintances, Charity posting less comments, thinner, Drew rebuilding a reputation brick by careful brick. Their choices led there, prioritizing money over relationships, assuming entitlement over effort. The isolation wasn't my doing. It was the natural cost of burning bridges for a payout that never came. The lesson crystallized over time. Family isn't defined by blood or who raised you under strict terms. It's built on respect, seeing someone fully supporting without strings, choosing them even when it's hard. Aunt Catherine gave me tools, but never that. My mother, brother, sister, cousin offered nothing but claims when convenient. Sawyer friends the life we created that was real. I kept one thing from the estate, a small leather-bound planner Aunt Catherine used for case notes, blank now. I filled pages with my own plans, vacations, goals, dreams discussed openly with Sawyer, no approvals needed. On quiet nights, I'd trace the cover and feel gratitude mixed with closure. She shaped my discipline. I chose what to keep and what to leave behind. Looking back from where I stand now, secure, loved, free, I know one truth absolutely. The people who truly belong in your life don't make you earn your place. They offer it willingly every day. And when they don't, walking away isn't loss. It's the start of something better.